The scream had already faded when the first light broke over the desert, but the bruises still burned. Mara lay in the dust beside a dried creek, her breath shallow, her face streaked with dirt and tears. The night before, Brent had hit her so hard she couldn't see straight. He had taken her purse, her last few dollars, her horse, even her boots. Her stomach had been empty for 2 days, and her tongue felt like sandpaper. Then he spat beside her and rode off laughing into the dark. When morning came, the wind was cold, the sun merciless. Mara crawled toward a small shape in the distance, half buried under sand. An old cabin, abandoned, broken windows and a sagging roof. Maybe it could hide her from the heat, or from the shame of still being alive. She'd stopped praying hours ago, but part of her still hoped someone might find her. She stumbled through the door, her legs trembling. The place smelled of dry wood and ghost, a table covered in dust, a bed frame with no mattress. The silence was so deep it hurt her ears. She dropped to her knees, clutching her stomach as hunger twisted it into knots. Whispers left her lips. I can't hold it in anymore. God, please, I can't. Her head hit the floorboards, and for the first time she wished she wouldn't wake up again. But fate wasn't finished with her. Later that morning, a shadow crossed the doorway. A tall man stepped inside, brushing dust off his worn coat. His beard was gray, his hands rough, his eyes heavy with years of quiet pain. Abel Kane had not been in this cabin for over a decade. Every board in that place still remembered his wife's cries. Every nail held a piece of what he lost. It was where his wife had died giving birth. He came today only because he'd finally found the courage to open that door again. What he found inside wasn't a ghost, and it was a living woman, broken and shaking. He froze. The sight dragged him back to every memory he tried to bury. Mara flinched when she saw him. Her voice cracked. Please, don't hurt me. Abel crouched down, speaking low. I ain't here to hurt you, miss. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Tears streamed down her bruised face. Her words came out between sobs. Please help me. I'll do anything. You can have me if you want. Just don't leave me here to die. Abel's jaw tightened. He had seen desperation before, but never like this. He pulled a canteen from his belt, unscrewed the cap, and placed it against her lips. Drink first, he said. Water spilled down her chin. She gulped like a starving animal. He waited until she finished, then looked around the room. This place ain't safe, he muttered. Coyotes'll sniff you out by night. Mara shook her head weakly. I don't care. I got nowhere else. Abel sighed. His gaze lingered on the walls that once heard his wife's voice. Now they echoed with the broken whisper of a stranger. He reached out his hand. Come on. You ain't dying here today. She hesitated, her body trembling. Why are you helping me? He didn't answer right away, but sometimes words weren't enough to explain why a man does the right thing. 'Cause no one helped her when she needed it. He said at last. She didn't know who her was, but in his eyes there was grief deep enough to drown in. He lifted her carefully, set her on his horse, and began the slow ride back across the plain. Behind them, the cabin stood silent once more, holding its secrets close. And as the wind rose, Mara looked at the man beside her and wondered, had she just been saved from death? Or was she stepping into a story she'd never escaped from? The ride back was slow and quiet. Mara's head rested against the saddle. Her eyes barely stayed open. Every bump on the trail pulled a small sound from her throat. Abel kept his gaze on the road. The morning sun cut through the dust, painting long lines across the fields. He hadn't brought anyone back to his ranch since his wife passed. The thought of another voice in that house felt strange, but leaving the girl out there to die felt worse. By the time they reached his cabin, the sun sat high and cruel. The house looked small against the empty land. A few fences, a lonely barn, a windmill that squeaked every time it turned. He lifted Mara off the horse and carried her inside. She was lighter than she looked. Her skin burned hot from fever. He laid her on the bed and poured water into a tin cup. Drink a little, he said. She nodded weakly. Her hands shook. Abel pulled a blanket over her and turned to light the stove. The room smelled of smoke and old pine. He cooked a small pot of broth, slow and simple. The smell filled the cabin, soft and human, something the place hadn't felt in years. When he offered it to her, She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You don't have to pay me," he said softly. "I ain't that kind of man." Her lips parted, confused. "I just thought, folks don't do things for free out here." Abel gave a tired half smile. "You'll work when you can stand on your feet again. Maybe cook, maybe mend a few shirts. That's fair enough." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, the wind outside howled across the plains. Abel sat by the fire, fixing an old saddle strap. From the bed behind him came the sound of steady breathing. For the first time in years, he didn't feel completely alone. Mara woke sometime past midnight. She saw him sleeping in the chair by the door, his hat pulled low. There was something about that quiet figure that made her chest ache. No one had ever protected her without wanting something in return. It scared her more than the darkness ever did. When morning came, the air smelled of coffee and rain. Abel handed her a cup, his voice calm. "You're safe here, Mara. You do your part, and you stay as long as you need." She nodded, clutching the cup with both hands. Her eyes dropped to the floor, but deep inside, something began to stir. It wasn't just hunger or fear anymore. It was trust, small and fragile, like the first flame in a cold room. And Abel, though he didn't say it, felt that same flame start to flicker inside him too. Outside, the windmill turned slow. The land was quiet again. But quiet never lasted long in Texas, because somewhere out there, someone else had heard that Mara was still alive, and he was already on his way back. 3 days later, Mara could walk steady again. The bruises had faded, but her spirit still felt thin. Abel said he needed supplies, so he hitched the wagon and told her to come along. "It'll do you good to see folks again," he said. She nodded, though her stomach twisted at the thought of facing strangers. The town was small, dusty, and loud with gossip. Every window seemed to have a face behind it, watching, judging. Horses clopped on the board, and the smell of coffee mixed with dry hay. Abel went to the general store while Mara followed, holding the list he gave her. For a moment, everything seemed calm. Then a voice she thought she'd never hear again slid through the air like a snake. "Well, look what we got here." Brent sneered from across the street. His grin was crooked, his eyes mean. He looked her up and down like she was dirt. "Didn't think you'd crawl this far, girl." Mara froze. Her body remembered the pain before her mind did. Abel turned, watching her face pale. Then she stepped forward, anger shaking her voice. "You stole my money. You left me to die." People stopped to look. Brent laughed. "Money, that was mine. Sweetheart, you took my purse when I was sleeping." The crowd believed him before she even had the chance to breathe. The crowd whispered. A man spit near her feet. In a place like this, it didn't take much for a woman's story to fall apart. Brent walked closer. "You want to give it back? Or should I take it out of your hide?" He raised his hand. Before the slap landed, Abel's arm caught his wrist midair. "That's enough," Abel said, his voice low but heavy. Brent tried to yank free, but Abel's grip didn't budge. "You got no proof, mister," Brent barked. Abel's eyes hardened. "I got enough." And for a second, the whole street went silent. The sheriff appeared at the corner, boots crunching. "Let go of him, Kane," Abel did, slow and deliberate. The sheriff looked at Mara, then Brent. "2 stories. No proof," he sighed. "Both of you cool down. No more fighting in my town," Brent smirked. "You hear that, old man? Keep your strays at home." He walked off laughing, but his eyes burned hate. Abel turned to Mara. "You all right?" She nodded, her lip trembling, but she could see something shift in Abel's face. He wasn't angry for himself. He was angry for her. They climbed back into the wagon. The road home felt longer than before. Neither of them spoke, but both knew this wasn't over. Some men don't let go, especially the kind that get beat in front of a crowd. And sure enough, that night, a shadow waited beyond the fence line, watching their cabin light flicker in the wind. So if you're still here, pour yourself a warm cup of tea. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. And if you'd like to ride with me again through these wild western nights, hit that subscribe button, partner. because the story of Mara and Abel has only just begun. The wind had been strange that night. Too quiet. Too cold for summer. Abel felt it first, that old gut sense that trouble was riding his way. He had seen enough men like Brent to know one thing. They never quit. Mara was inside the cabin, mending a torn shirt by lamplight. Abel stepped out to check the horses when he heard it. Footsteps, then the soft creak of a saddle. Two shadows moved near the fence line. He blew out the lamp, letting the darkness settle. The moonlight was thin, but enough to see the glint of steel. A knife, then another. Brent's voice came low and mean. "Come out, old man." "I just want what's mine." Abel said nothing. He grabbed the shotgun from the porch and eased forward. Boots silent in the dust, and the second man kicked the gate open. "Don't make this hard. Hand the girl over, and maybe we'll let you keep breathing." The words burned through the silence. Inside, Mara froze. Her hands trembled on the needle. When she peeked through the window, she saw Abel standing tall, gun leveled. The sight of him there, calm and solid against the night, made her heart twist. Brent spat. "You gonna shoot me, Kane? Over some lying thief?" Abel's voice stayed low. "You step 1 foot closer, and we find out." Then everything moved fast. Brent lunged. The knife flashed in the moonlight. Abel swung the shotgun hard, catching Brent in the ribs. The blade sliced through his sleeve, drawing blood, but he didn't flinch. The second man came from the side, shouting. Abel turned, using the gun like a club, striking him across the jaw. The man dropped, dazed. Brent charged again. This time Abel caught his wrist, twisted hard, and the knife clattered to the ground. Abel grabbed a rope from the fence and tied Brent's hands tight. Breath heavy, eyes blazing. The noise had drawn neighbors from across the field. Someone yelled that the sheriff was coming. Brent cursed, struggling, but Abel stood over him. His shirt was torn, blood dripping from his arm, but his voice was steady. "Next time you come for her, bring a coffin." The sheriff arrived minutes later. He saw the knives, the bruises, the witnesses. Brent was hauled up, cursing the whole way. The lawman gave Abel a long look. "Good work keeping her safe. Kane, you ought to rest that arm." When the crowd left, only the sound of the windmill remained. Mara stepped out from the doorway, her eyes wide, tears shining in the dim light. She whispered, "You could have let them take me." Abel shook his head. "Not my style." She smiled through her tears. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the dark. But as dawn crept over the horizon, Abel knew peace never lasted long in these lands. And what he had just done tonight would change everything between them. The morning after the fight, the ranch was quiet again. The ground still showed the marks of the struggle, but the danger had passed. Abel sat on the porch, his arm wrapped in a bandage, staring out at the open fields. The air smelled of dust and wet grass after a long night of fear. Mara brought him coffee, her hands steady now. He looked at her and smiled a little. "Guess I made a mess of the place," he said. She smiled back. "Guess you did. But you saved me again." He shook his head. "I didn't save you, Mara. You saved yourself. I just gave you a chance to stand." The words stayed with her all morning. As the sun climbed higher, she cleaned the porch, fed the horses, and hung the washed sheets on the line. For the first time since she had come here, she felt like she belonged. Later that afternoon, Abel walked her back to the old cabin where he had found her. The door still hung crooked, the floor still scarred with time. He stood in silence, his hand brushing the wall. "This was my wife's place," he said softly. "I couldn't walk in here for years, but when I saw you that morning, I thought maybe it was time to stop running from ghosts." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was just trying to survive," she said. "Turns out I was just looking for a place where someone would see me as more than what I lost." Abel turned to her, his voice low. "Well, you're seen now. You're home." The weeks rolled by. Together they fixed the fences, planted a small patch of vegetables, and rebuilt the roof of that old house. Laughter began to replace silence. Every scar, every broken board became part of something new. Sometimes, at dusk, Abel would sit watching the fields glow gold in the fading light. He'd see Mara moving through the barn, strong and sure, and think how strange life was. You can lose everything and still find something worth living for if you just have the courage to stay. And maybe that's the lesson of this land, that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just choosing to get up again, to believe again, to love again. So tell me, friend, where are you listening from tonight? Are you sitting by a window or out on your porch watching the stars? Grab yourself a cup of tea, lean back and take a breath. If this story touched you, give it a like. It means more than you know. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so we can keep riding through the Wild West together, one story at a time, because somewhere out there, beyond the dust and the wind, there's always another story waiting to be told. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours.